and DeepSeek. You don't want to miss this one. LifeArchitect.ai/what's in Grok. This is exclusively for full. Here's a first look at xAI's Grok-4 model for the first quarter of 2025. And Dr. Eric Zelikman from xAI gave us this prompt. Write a Python script for a bouncing yellow ball within a square. Make sure to handle collision detection properly. Make the square slowly rotate. Implement it in Python. Make sure ball stays within the square. And this is the result from Grok-4. They wanted to go a little bit further than that, so they added to the prompt. You can try this yourself in your favorite model. I gave this one again to Grok-4, this additional prompt. Put the ball in a tesseract instead of a square. And Grok-4 came back with this result. Looks like the physics are working pretty nicely if we envisage that as a wireframe, kind of a bit beyond a cube, obviously, a tesseract. Doing pretty well. I've just released my independent report called What's in Grok, and it's a comprehensive analysis, an independent analysis of xAI's Grok models, all the way up to Grok-5 actually, but we start with Grok-0 from a couple of years ago, 33 billion parameters. We're up to Grok-4 very shortly, it'll be released publicly. Grok-4 later this year. Grok-5 in 2026, and it was actually designed by Igor Babushkin, who wrote Gopher, AlphaStar, and AlphaCode for DeepMind, also wrote GPT-4 and Codex for OpenAI, worked a lot with Alec Radford and Ilya. He's been doing a lot of cool stuff. We're expecting Grok-4 to outperform pretty much every frontier model. The MMLU scores there. It was trained on the Colossus supercomputers, not the Bletchley Park Colossus from Alan Turing, but the new one that's in Memphis. We'll see it inside the Tesla Optimus robots. We'll then see it inside the Neuralink devices. Here it's shown as just a little clip on the ear, completely non-invasive surgery. This is one of the largest frontier AI models in the world. I think it's the most interesting at the moment, despite the media talking about OpenAI and DeepSeek. You don't want to miss this one. LifeArchitect.ai/what's in Grok. This is exclusively for full subscribers of the memo at the moment. It's comprehensive, it's 30 plus pages, and we've already got reviewers from xAI investors and beyond.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids. AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We have to be going live right now. xAI just released Grok-4 and another model or another version of the model. It's an agentic platform for Grok-4 called Grok-4 Heavy. In my testing, it gives you 4 agents and they go out and answer your question. They can take, seems like they can take half an hour, and they come back with scores that are outcompeting absolutely everyone. That's the current state of the art. Better than Claude Opus 4, better than Gemini 2.5 Pro and their agents. This one is really powerful, really, really big. Also really, really expensive. This is the interface for Super Grok, they're calling it, Super Grok Heavy. And a few hours ago, there was only Grok-3 inside of this drop-down. Now we have Grok-4 as well as Grok-4 Heavy. If you wanted to pay for this, I believe it's $3,000 a year. I thought I would be a little bit more sensible than that and pay the $300 for the month. Many thanks to subscribers of the memo, LifeArchitect.ai/memo. The reason it's so expensive is because this model is huge. I'm estimating it at about 5 trillion parameters trained on 80 trillion tokens. And when you allow that model to think, you're using a lot of compute. You're probably using several H100s just to load it, and then they're working the entire 30 minutes of that reasoning process. So you can imagine that adds up, particularly with heavy users. I'm not usually a heavy user, but you can imagine some companies, some enterprises just running this almost 24/7 and getting their money's worth. So $3,000 a year starts to sound pretty competitive. In fact, compare it with a Devon AI license, which is up around $6,000 a year. All right. Where should we start? Let's actually start. I got a new toy. I've got a new iPad on the side here. Let's start with comparing it with our current models. We've got GPT-4o as our default inside ChatGPT. And, you know, if you didn't know any better, you would probably say this is a pretty good model. If we rated it on GPQA, which is our scores down here, GPT-4o's current model is only scoring 46% on the Google Proof question and answer benchmark. That's why I recommend using GPT 4.1, 4.5 while we've got it. Both have much higher scores. And then when we move into the reasoning models and we start turning on, we've got O1 over here or O3, we're getting very, very high scores for the Google Proof question answer. You're actually getting 83.4% for O3. I've put O4 there in this last section, but actually that's close enough to what Grok-4 is achieving. Let's get rid of my head for a moment. And even though I estimated O4 to be getting towards this 90% mark on GPQA, we're actually already seeing this with Grok-4. So I'm sure there'll be 2 or 3 major frontier models launched over the next few weeks and months, including GPT-5. We're waiting for Gemini 3 and some others. Right now, this thing is hugely powerful, and you're getting, as I just said, you're getting this incredible performance of about 90% on Google Proof question answer, which is worrying because not too long ago, in my mid-year report, which I still haven't done a video about, but I will scroll down here so we can read a quote that I thought would last for a little bit. In fact, let's just search for this. When I was talking about performance, I said it is likely that any model that scores a primary score greater than 50% on the HLE and greater than 90% on the GPQA, the one we just looked at, is actually an ASI system. It's artificial superintelligence. No large language model system met this criteria as of 9 days ago. Well, as of a few hours ago, but 9 days ago for my report, this has already been breached. And in my special edition of the memo that went out just a moment ago, I said that as of now, the criteria that I set, and my criteria I think is pretty fair, is close to being met. In fact, the current scores for Grok-4 Heavy, with its 4 agents running simultaneously. Oh, well, we can just look at this pretty picture instead. 88.9% on the GPQA, so close enough to my 90% that you just saw on this special chart at the very top right there. And 44.4% on humanity's last exam. This is the best of the best questions they could come up with by our smartest scientists. I think once we breach 50% on that one, it's game over. We could call it artificial superintelligence. But Grok-4 comes very, very, very close. Let's run heavy for a moment here with one of my earlier Alprompts. I'll use pretty much the first Alprompt that I came up with 2 or 3 years ago. I don't think this is leaked, but it's so easy that all frontier models solve it, and most models over about 80 billion parameters solve it as well. So I've selected Grok4 Heavy here. I've actually turned off Grok can browse the web because it seemed like that was slowing it down. It would often go and find 70 plus resources, hyperlinks, before it came back, and it was treading on 20-30 minutes to finish. All right, so Grok4 Heavy, underneath the hood here, is running 4 agents in parallel, and they run very asynchronously. They are very different speeds, and I don't know why. In this example, they all kind of look like they're lined up, but if we waited for 20 or 30 minutes, we might see the agents split in very different ways. One will go faster, one will go much slower. And that's kind of cool to see. I would love to know what the reasoning is there. It might just be the randomness inherent in large language models exploring latent space and coming up with a response. There's some level of flexibility there, as well as each of these agents probably is running in its own instance. So you'll have network, GPU, compute, interconnect effects as well. Kind of interesting to think about. No other model is doing this. I don't even believe O3 Pro is doing this. You only get your one model and you just get to run it for longer. Whereas this is running 4 models in parallel for about half an hour each. I don't know if you want to say that's 2 hours total. You probably couldn't say that. It's allowing each to run for half an hour, and then I believe that it's just choosing the best response. I don't know what the judge is. I don't know how they come up with a consensus. But let's look at some that I prepared earlier. This one is from my Alprompt 2025 H1s. From the beginning of this year, shouldn't have been leaked. You can get it yourself at LifeArchitect.ai/Alprompt, including the answers. We ran this Grok4 Heavy thought for 10 minutes and 5 seconds, and it didn't actually score very well. 0 out of 5, 1 out of 5. This is a fail here, so we're still at 1 out of 5. This is a pass, 2 out of 5, and this is also a fail. So we're at a really disappointing 2 out of 5 on the 2025 H1 Alprompt. I will update the Grok page to mention that. And we also ran this one. I think this is the first time this has ever been shown on video, or I could be wrong. It's my 2025 H2. I'll release it after this live stream. It is really, really, really difficult. But if you gave yourself an hour per question, you'd get it. A human with enough time would get it. You don't need super specialist knowledge. You could get this with general knowledge, possibly a web search, definitely with different resources, especially the first question. If you spent an hour on that and you just used a library, you'd get that one. There's some trick questions as usual, looking for hallucinations and confabulations. There's another trick question in there. It's pretty easy for a human to go and find out. Very, very difficult for an LLM. This is not in its data set, and it is also not on the internet, or not easily findable on the internet. Same with question 4, very difficult to find. Question 5 uses reasoning, and question 6 as a bonus. It thought this time for 22 minutes and 54 seconds. All 4 agents worked for 22 minutes in parallel. Again, you could say that's close to 2 hours of thinking, 22 minutes of wall clock time, 23 minutes of wall clock time. Let's score it. 0. I'm going to have to actually check this one. I haven't done this for ages. Oh yeah, that's 0 out of 5, 0 out of 5, 0 out of 5. We'll pay that one 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, and 0 out of 5 as that one as well. It did get this one correct. This is not particularly difficult, but it seems like it would be impossible for an LLM to solve. I'll read it out. How many characters, including punctuation, are in your full sentence response to this question? You have to answer in Ocker Pig Latin without integers. See if you can do that one yourself. It's a bit of a pen and paper exercise, and there are many answers. This is probably one of the better ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters, and our answer is Evansay or 7. So it got the bonus answer there as well, which is kind of cool. So 1 out of 5 for 2025 H2. And did we have 2 out of 5 for 2025 H1? And you can see just how long it takes to think of answers to questions. I think the guys have done some really big work on compute to make sure that if you asked it a significantly challenging question, it would give it a red hot go. And that's pretty impressive to see. Let's give it a misguided attention question. As I mentioned, we want to turn web off here. I just don't think it's necessary. We want to use the 5 trillion parameters estimated of the model rather than allowing it to go out and just solve it with the web. So we're using Grok-4 Heavy here, $3,000 a year, and we've turned off the web search. So it's having to use only its latent space to figure out the best response to this one. And as a human, you might be able to see the response to or the best answer to this question. You might even have the answer in your head already. It is a trick question. It's from a benchmark or a set of questions called Misguided Attention, which is supposed to allow LLMs to go through their usual process of just complete the next best token, and in most cases, skip a little piece that would help it decide. And I think the little piece that would help it decide there is this word. Models running very much asynchronously again. I'm going to run another one in the background. I'd like to get a really big question for it because that's what this thing is for. This is for companies to run it, basically. Grok4 Heavy once again, web search turned off once again. You're a rigorous and aggressive CRO. Assess the top 10 risks for the Big 4 auditing consultancy business in Australia. And behind the scenes, away it goes. In our live stream, we've got some really great examples of this. There will be very specific examples for your use case. And again, I see this being applied to medicine. Help us solve this disease, come up with this new invention, and XAI's representatives, staff members were saying that that is what it is intended to do, solve new problems for us, be an ASI. So I don't think I have it on hand, but I'd love to give it an ASI prompt, which I was having a bit of fun playing with maybe 4 or 5 months ago from today. We discussed it in one of the memo roundtables, and you're invited to participate in the LifeArchitect.ai roundtables. They're part of the memo. If you're a full subscriber, jump in with people from all around the world. There's an interesting representation from the Nordic regions, and then USA, and then here in South Australia for some reason. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if I can find the ASI prompt that I was playing around with. In the background here, we have, and I'll play around with our Zoom for a moment. We have a response from Grok4 Heavy. It completed that in 1 minute and 20 seconds. For our Big 4 auditing consultancy, we have these risk events: causes, consequences, and controls. And we've referenced some interesting websites. I don't know why the heavy emphasis on Australian websites. I know that Australia has a great risk management framework and a great reputation for risk management here, particularly in our resources sector. But look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, actually, it was in the prompt. I take that all back. We did say that this business was in Australia, so it might be that we've got a heavier representation of Australian resources, Australian checks. Let's throw this in New York and see if we get that a little bit different. Still using Grok4 Heavy, still got web turned off, but in this case, it's not listening to me. It just ignored me and used the web anyway. All right, let's see. Where is this ASI prompt that we were playing with? And there's no kind of best practice way of prompting, which is part of the fun, really. How would you prompt an artificial superintelligence to begin helping you optimize the world? And how would you do it without kind of steering it in a direction, giving it a leading question? You don't want to say, optimize the planet Earth, make sure that X is distributed this way, or concentrate on energy, or don't do Y, because each of those leading prompts or keywords in the prompt will influence what we get in the response. So it's actually kind of a cool challenge. I intend to find this, or maybe we'll have to start one from scratch. Oh, I think I might be able to find this from my previous ChatGPT chats. We've got 1 minute and 22 seconds for Grok4 Heavy, giving us a risk register for Big Four auditing consultancy in New York. And we get a slightly different result than in Australia. Notably, we've got AI disruption to core services this time. I don't think we saw that in Australia. Which makes a lot of sense because not much happening in the AI world here in Australia. Shame. We referenced 9 web pages there, and they were very much steered towards the US. All right, I think I'm closer to finding my ASI prompt that I was playing with. All right, so it says that I was originally playing with this back in... Oh, now after I've begun that sentence, I realized I can't see when I was playing with it. I think, if I check this email, it was the middle of May and beginning of June. Let me grab my scratch pad for a moment. Hopefully, even though this is very long, hopefully this will be something that you can have a look at. This is the start of the prompt that I had in there. I know it looks very intimidating or very long, but it's saying, you're the peak of ASI, adhere to Asimov's law of robotics, including the zeroth law, align with cross-cultural laws and frameworks, help humanity across all fields and life slices. The aim is to increase life satisfaction. We might give an ASI a more specific aim or even a more general aim, or we might not use the term life satisfaction and we'll get slightly different results. Think big. What else have we got here? Rely on new, never before seen inventions. Audience will be a variety of humans. Tone should be casual, but for the level of the UN. And just so we can read it, put it in a table showing these columns. As is to be time to optimize, mechanism of change, and do it for macro level and one for home daily life. Hopefully that's clear to you there. I know it's absolutely absurd as a prompt. Coming back now to our earlier Alprompt, thought for 2 minutes 55 seconds. 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5 on that easier one. And still using web pages even though web search is turned off. We're in Grok4 Heavy once again, asking this really big ASI question to it. I don't think it's a perfect ASI prompt, but it was one that I was just playing with as a start. It might even be worth throwing this into GitHub and having different versions of it. Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate to have XAI and XAI's founder as the representatives of this model, the largest model in the world, the state-of-the-art model, and look at some of the embarrassing and disappointing media and politics around it. Really disappointing. Not my first rodeo, though. I have had a couple of run-ins with representatives that are there now. That sounds a bit roundabout, doesn't it? I stepped on stage to the, what was it called? It was a major human intelligence conference in Bangkok, and I believe it was in 2018. And I stepped on stage the day after a particular member, current member of XAI, had gone to the media and used a horrific slur against an Australian. So it was a bit of a weird situation to be in. And here we are again, showing the state-of-the-art model. And of course, we've got all sorts of stuff being thrown around that I won't talk about here. But you'll see it quite easily on Twitter or X, or if you open up CNN or any of those news places. I don't think it's relevant today. We are looking at the best model in the world. Grok-3 was scoring 84% when it was given time to think. Grok-4 on GPQA now scoring closer to 90%. And I don't have a humanities last exam chart, but to go from the previous state of the art, well, at least we can look at a models table picture here, can't we? If you want to have a look at this yourself, LifeArchitect.ai/models table. And the second table there is the models table ranking. The previous state of the art on HLE was Gemini's latest 2.5 Pro. That's the 5th of June, or 0605. Scored 21, or 03 was originally said to have scored 24.9. We're pretty much doubling those scores. Grok4 Heavy scoring 44.4 on the full HLE and actually scoring 50 on the text-only version of HLE. Absolutely incredible. Incredible. Feel like we're missing a moderator today, so I'd ask you very kindly to be careful in the chat for me, please. This is our result. Grok4 Heavy thought for 2 minutes and 4 seconds, and the 4 agents agreed on these macro level optimizations for artificial superintelligence in terms of transforming, I think in the prompt, it's not just the Earth, it's more like you could call it the universe. Universal free energy via ambient quantum harvesters. Great. That's pretty huge. AI generated blueprints, shared. Got some notes in there. Healthcare, instead of being reactive, we've got proactive through symbiotic bioenhancers. Tiny self-replicating devices that monitor and repair bodies in real time. That's interesting. Some of these seem way out there, but I think everything's going to seem way out there when we have access to a full artificial superintelligence. I'd think of Grok-4 as being Proto-ASI, just before ASI. Rather than siloed education, lifelong neural learning, you could see that already with at least 3 major BMIs in the Western world. We now have a 4th BMI in China that looks very impressive and is already built into the medical insurance system. So you can tick the box that said BCI installed in hospital and you get your payments for that. That's very futuristic, but that's China for you. Moving from scarcity to abundance, know all about that. Environment degraded, so self-healing ecosystems with nanoswarm restorers. Pretty cool. Instead of bureaucratic governance, global harmony networks, AI-mediated consensus platforms that align decisions with collective good. How cool is that? And it's estimating that that will take about 2 years, 730 days to achieve that. Implement this one last using mature tech from earlier phases. All right, so my ASI prompt might still need some work, but this is still kind of fun. In the home daily life optimizations, so this is outside the macro level we just saw, we're moving nutrition to optimal meals from air and light, flavored to taste. That's kind of cool. And it's going to achieve that in 3 months. Sleep disruptions, we're using Dreamweavers. Pods that induce restorative sleep in 4 hours with guided positive dreams. I'd never even thought of that. If you optimize the sleep state, can you move from an 8 to 10 hour recommendation to a 4-hour AI optimized sleep? Wow. Work micro tasks via AI companions, 2 to 4 hour shifts. That's probably a good idea. I know a lot of educators that limit their meetings to either 50 minutes. Sorry, these are student workshop meetings. So teacher and student, the classroom environment, very limited to make sure that the brains get to reset. And certainly not something we see today in our 8-hour day. Social interactions limited. Hollow presence orbs. That's kind of cool. Can't wait for that. Leisure scattered. Immersive reality gardens. Sounds very much like big screen VR cinema. You know the one I'm talking about? You walk into it with your Apple Vision Pro or your Meta Quest and you're in a completely different world with people from everywhere. Personal development sporadic, and AI will give us inner harmony guides. Kind of cool. Don't know why it referenced web pages again, but it did. Mainly just for stats, it looks like. Not for any of the technology or innovations or optimizations that it mentioned. Thought for... Wow, time to first token. Oh, I see. So it thought for 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes. But with our 4 agents in parallel, you could call that 8 minutes. And we get our first response about 2 minutes and 12 seconds after that. Excellent. What have we missed? Let's have a look at some of the really interesting benchmarks that it managed to achieve. When they started the live stream, they said that Grok-4 would score 100% on the SAT with brand new questions. I'm not surprised by that. We had charts like this one where GPT-4 was already scoring 94% on new SAT exams. And this is actually from now 3 years ago. GPT-4 was ready in August 2022. We didn't get it for about a year after that, something like that. And so it makes a lot of sense for us to already be hitting 100% in the SAT. And you can easily see that anyway with the AIME 25. This is the big maths exam that a lot of frontier models are using as a test. This was published in February 2025, so it shouldn't be in people's data sets when they're training the model, wouldn't be in Grok4's data set, and Grok4 Heavy scoring 100% on the AIME 2025 using 4 agents in parallel to answer each of those, I think it's 20 questions, but I put a link to it in the memo if you'd like to have a look at the questions and answers. That one's impressive. The GPQA is certainly impressive because it outperforms anyone else in the bubbles there that you've seen a number of times. So we're moving from left to right. Smarter is better. Across to the right-hand side is better. I think the human average on the GPQA assessment is actually 0%. XAI's founder was saying he thinks an expert could get 5% on it. I don't know about that. The chance of scoring using random guessing would yield a 25% score on that anyway, because it's multiple choice A, B, C, D. And we have a measured average already for people, experts with PhDs would get 34%. And if they're a domain expert, they would be achieving 65% on the GPQA. Grok-4 Heavy achieving 88.9%, outperforming, well, definitely everyone that was benchmarked or baselined for that test. No other interesting benchmarks in that one for me. You may have one that's interesting for you. Oh, I lost my special edition. There we go. And the vending bench guys came on stage to say that they tested Grok-4. I will note that they tested a model called Grok-4 0709, which means the 9th of July, which is today. So they were on the very bleeding edge of testing Grok-4 here, and it outperformed both humans, about 4 or 5x on a human baseline performance, as well as the previous state of the art. It outperformed us significantly. It beat Claude Opus 4 with 2.2 times higher net worth at the end of stocking a vending machine and running it as a business. It's a really interesting benchmark. It's a realistic benchmark. And if you've been following the news, one of our frontier labs ran this recently and complained that it was doing a pretty poor job. But we don't have to talk about that at all today. My What's in Grok paper talks about Grok 3 using 100,000 NVIDIA H100 equivalents for compute training. We're now using 3 times that, 300,000 NVIDIA H100 equivalents for training Grok 4. That's why I think it is significantly larger than Grok 3. Once again, my estimates, 5 trillion parameters trained on 80 trillion tokens. And I'm mainly talking about text there. Here's a view on their pre-training compute. They used about the same pre-training compute. Oh, that can't be right. Let me rethink that. It looks like they used about the same pre-training compute, but they're using 10x compute when they're giving it the RL logic trace training. So we might have trained on 80 trillion parameters, 80 trillion tokens for pre-training. That the data set was, that's about 7 times larger than the GPT-4 dataset, and they may have trained on, just as a guess, 300 billion tokens of RL traces, but they allowed it to do its reinforcement learning 10 times more than they had done for Grok 3. That is pretty silly, but that's what everyone's doing. That's also what OpenAI have shown that they are doing with what's coming after O3. So we might call it GPT-5. I believe there will be an O4 model as well, and I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be playing around with that. All right. Any questions that we should smash into Grok-4? If you'd like to watch the original live stream, it's kind of interesting to see. Well, it's kind of interesting to see the public speaking training that certain members may or may not have had. And it's really cool to have the developers and researchers on stage providing us real insights on how they train the model, and more importantly, the capabilities of the model, because we're still kind of guessing what it could and should do. And then we're a little bit surprised when we get these outrageous benchmarks coming out of a model that has essentially just been fed millions or hundreds of millions of books, and also the equivalent of hundreds of millions of web pages, and all of the new code, legal, academic papers and journals, news media that we now feed our frontier large language models. If you do have a question, you can tag me in the chat, but I think it's easy enough for me to be able to see what's going on. If you're more interested in just the plain old Grok-4, we can certainly do that. I think Grok-3 got this one anyway. This is a really basic question. It appears in one of my original Alprompts. But if we've got thinking turned on for Grok-4, and I don't know how you turn it off, let's just assume it turns itself on and off. I don't even have a marking. Oh yes, I do have a marking key for myself here. Eighth. Oh, I see. It's converted a quarter to 2/8 to make it a bit easier for itself. Half converted to 4/8. 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, of course. I'm checking my key before I actually look at this because obviously that's easy to grade. And that looks like its initial answer. It's kind of confusing in how it answered that. Just give the answer. That was pretty clever. We want 1/8, quarter, half, 5/8, 3/4, 7/8. And never show. Sometimes our older models were hallucinating a 3/8 in here, which didn't exist in the prompt. So that was kind of interesting to see how it would just use stuff that it had seen in the data set, I reckon. Probably worthwhile noting just how similar the staff makeup at XAI is to some of the other frontier labs. And I've documented this quite heavily in my What's in Grok report. But the leader at the moment, the technical chief scientist, is Igor Babushkin, and he comes from DeepMind, where he worked on Gopher, including the big data set there called Massive Text. The Gopher architecture, he looked at RL during AlphaStar, which was a little while ago, as well as the big AlphaCode model inside of DeepMind. Also worked at OpenAI on the GPT-4 dataset and the architecture there. Worked on the old codex before OpenAI decided to use the exact same name for a 2025 version. So that dataset and that architecture and the method of sampling there, that's the GPT-3 version of codex, let's call it. He also worked with Ilya Sutskever at OpenAI. So this is the leader of XAI, and you can probably tell from the design, the platform, the UI, the responses, it's very similar to OpenAI's. Indeed, the Grok-4 voice model interface looks exactly the same as the ChatGPT voice model interface, including the really basic colored abstract bubble that kind of moves around while you're asking it things. All right, I wonder what works these days. No, not that. Here we go. Let's jump into a couple of questions. Alexi is asking, will this increase the AGI perspective? I haven't actually looked at that yet. AGI really only requires maybe adaptive learning, and certainly I think some sort of access to the real world through a humanoid robot. We're at 94% as we speak. My definition is AGI is a machine that performs at the level of an average human. I also have a log of ASI, a checklist for ASI, which is a machine that performs at the level of an expert human in practically any field. Completely different concepts, closely related, of course, but very different in the measurement of what we want to get to. So our last update to the AGI countdown, seems like it was quite a while ago, we've got a lot of info stuff here, was the 1X Neo autonomous update in the home. You may have seen this already. This does not look like 4K YouTube, come on. I don't have my fibre connection here in South Australia like I did in Brisbane. But you're watching the 1X Neo, and by the way, 1X is backed by OpenAI. doing stuff around the home, and it's not scripted or programmed. It's instead end-to-end thinking, much like a frontier large language model would do. This has vision and a vision model, and is able to do some pretty incredible stuff using that. So it's not very much further for us to get to 100%. I don't know if Grok-4 would bump this up. I think we achieved cognitive AI a while ago in its ability to think like an average human without self-adaptive learning. So I'm really just allowing it to grow up a little bit in terms of what a human can do, an average human can do in life. And that is outside of just logic and thinking and creativity. It's also learning. And then I've got a little checklist in here anyway that says it would be great if it could do something basic like assemble IKEA furniture. And I think we're very, very, very close to that. I don't know if Grok-4 gets us closer to that until it gets bound to the Tesla Optimus robot. We've got kind of fun questions. Do you have a favorite TV series featuring cybernetic characters / AI? What a great question. I think everyone should have watched Lita AI, the 67 episodes on that one. I had a blast playing with those experiments back in 2021. It's now 4 years later, more than 4 years later, and they're still a great watch because even though we have models that are smarter than Lita, we still don't have models that do the real-time video that Lita emulated. So if I was recommending something for people to be watching, it would be LifeArchitect.ai /Lita. You can watch them all for free. There's 67 episodes. Reggie Watts came and did an episode for us in San Diego. That was a lot of fun. And there's some special editions as well. She played Dungeons and Dragons with a group from the US. She did some really interesting stuff. TV series featuring AI. I don't know if I have a good answer to that. When I had COVID again recently, a couple of weeks ago, I turned on The West Wing. I don't know if I should admit to that or not. It seemed like something that would be fun to have a look at, but don't put me in the West Wing fan bucket, please. I'd love your question, your answer to that though. Do you guys have a favourite TV series featuring AI? I certainly have a bunch of movies that I enjoy that I've even recommended at LifeArchitect.ai /AGI movies. Ready Player One's definitely on my list. Arrival. The Secret, just for the abundance part of that and the kind of different thinking. Everyone, the entire 8+ billion of us, are going to have to get our heads around something that has never been seen before, and that is a life where we don't have to swap labor or cognitive labor for credits. That's really, really, really difficult for humanity to get their heads around. We've got intergenerational kind of beatings to have us see. You come up through these cubicles, you learn in this rote environment, and then you get put in jail, which is your desk at a Fortune 500 company, and then you swap your numbers in your bank account for survival. And I don't think we need to be doing that anymore. Certainly ASI will show us how to do that. You don't need me to tell you how that's going to happen. Love watching her. I think that is a really good movie. It's a very recent movie. I think this was based on a book from the 21st century. He wasn't even a specific science fiction writer. He was, let's find him. Oh, that's not an easy way to search, is it? Oh, sorry. It was a screenplay actually written by Spike Jonze. And I believe that he wrote it, oh, there you go, conceived the idea in the early 21st century after reading about AI. So this is kind of recent, and Spike Jonze is not particularly known as, a futurist. He's not known as a thought leader in AI or anything like that. And yet the presentation of artificial intelligence in that movie was tremendous. Adjustment Bureau, you could argue that's not particularly AI, but once again, it's just talking about different ways of approaching the world. Ray Kurzweil's documentary on Transcendent Man, and that's all 6 that are in there at the moment. Jacob is asking, what do you think of Google's AI mode? Shall I assume that you're talking about AI model there? I have been planning to do an entire video called One Group, and my thesis there is that, and this is just one option that the world could go, but my thesis there is that perhaps we're moving to a stage where there will only be one company, one business, one enterprise. Let's call it one group. This has been talked about before. This is not incredibly new thinking from me, but I can see this coming very, very soon. And in fact, DeepMind CEO, Dr. Sir Demis Hassabis, has said he also thinks money might not be the right thing to talk about post-ASI. Companies might not be the right thing to talk about post-ASI. My assertion is a company probably like Alphabet will do everything. They'll do my Baker's Delight down the street through some sort of AI, maybe vending machine, maybe other delivery. They'll take over shoemaking because ASI will help them optimize manufacturing, marketing, distribution. They will do anything you can think of. Your accountant, your lawyer, but I think the goods part of it is really interesting. And I know I've used the term alphabet. Let's talk about it as one group. You'll have one group cars, one group houses, one group, fill in the blanks there. Every single industry, it would make sense for ASI to take over that whole thing under one group because nothing else could exist with the optimizations afforded by ASI. ASI should give us infinite optimizations, but let's say it's 10x or 100x. None of the Fortune 500s or none of the top NASDAQ guys could exist if there's a competitor doing stuff 10 times better than them, 10 times cheaper than them, and then change that 10 to 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. So for that reason, I know it's a very long answer, for that reason, I think Google's Gemini Pro 2.5 and upcoming Gemini Pro 3 is the highest performing model sitting within the highest performing group. I'm talking about Google and DeepMind together. And if I had to make a bet in this moment, I think the likeliest option is that they will take the cake. And you can certainly quote me on that because I don't mind being wrong. That is just my current feeling based on analysis and, well, everything that I do. The IQ measurement of Grok-4, not sure what that means. I have already talked about the fact that we're probably post-IQ now. We can no longer test IQ based on the Stanford Binet or the Wechsler because we're just so far out of bounds there. Let me get rid of my head again. So a frontier model in 2025 would be scoring in the 99.99999999 percentile, 99.9, nearly kind of recurring, although mathematicians will argue with me there. It's no one can outperform it in our standard questions, even on new tests that the models haven't seen. So if we get a Stanford Binet 6 or a Wechsler Whisk 6 or a WACE 6, we'll find that the frontier model, having not seen that IQ test, scores 100% on that IQ test, which means, like every other benchmark, it's a bad benchmark because there's nothing high enough to be able to test it. Hopefully that answers your question. Grok-4, like O3, would have an IQ of 195 or 1 in 10 billion people. That's my estimate. I don't think we're able to even use IQ anymore. If you're referencing the drawings I had on the iPad, on the on this new viz that you can find for yourself at LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-5 or LifeArchitect.ai/viz. I did match, oh no, sorry, it's the Bubbles one. I did match GPQA with IQ just to give a bit of a feeling. And you can see the same kind of numbers happening there. GPQA of 80%, I've estimated that as an IQ of 162. I know that's really intricate stuff, and if you'd like to know more about that, there's lifearchitect.ai/mapping, and that's where I talk through in significant detail the top 4 benchmarks, MMLU, MMLU Pro, GPQA, and HLE, as well as the mapping between them and IQ to get the kind of charts that you just saw. Apologies for scrolling. I'm just trying to find if there's a better way. We might just have to look at this one, but it's difficult to look at all at once. That's a mapping between IQ, MMLU, MMLU Pro, and GPQA, and basically saying we top out before some of those benchmarks even get halfway. If we were drawing Grok on here, it would be off the top of the screen. So when I created this, and it wasn't very long ago, I was wondering how long it would take for us even to hit GPQA score of 80, and now we have Grok-4 scoring, I think it was 88.8 on the GPQA assessment. Let's triple check that for everyone. Yeah, 88.9. So off the top of the screen, we've hit the ceiling, I reckon, on that one. I don't think we would have a reliable result past 90. So that's when we turn to our HLE test, humanities last exam. Hanky's asking, do you think AI will solve aging within a decade? A decade is 2025 to 2035. A lot can happen in that time. A lot of my colleagues have started saying they won't forecast more than a year in advance. It's impossible to go more than 1 or 2 years out. So I don't know if anyone can say. Coupled with the fact that I'm just not interested in longevity or aging as a thing. So I don't really have an answer to that. You could possibly have a look at what's happening with the alpha systems from DeepMind. So if you go to lifearchitect.ai/Gemini report, I have a list of 19 of DeepMind's alpha systems, starting with AlphaGo, that was using reinforcement learning to play the board game Go with more than trillions of possibilities on that board, and outperformed the world champion Lee Sedol. We now have some interesting stuff happening with AlphaFold, but more recently with Alpha Proteo. I don't actually know how they're pronouncing that internally. I usually check with them about Google Imagine. I said, do you say Google Imagen or Google Imagine? And apparently internally they're saying Imagine. But Alpha Proteo and even Alpha Genome that just came out in the last few days are going to be doing some incredible stuff for narrow artificial superintelligence in specific places for us in medicine. Oh, Kitty's favourite AI show was called Humans on Channel 4. Channel 4, is that a UK thing? Sounds like a UK thing. Oh, of course, British show. I can't show you my setup here, but it's a little bit ridiculous. So if you're wondering why I get lost or distracted sometimes, I have 5 windows up there. I've got my main window here. I've got a tablet here. We've got the ocean behind us. I've got a Stream Deck sitting here that I punch so that we can change monitors. Then I have to remember that it's basically presentation and dealing with comments as well, or having fun with commentary as well. Appreciate you guys being with us here. I never got to show you Adelaide, but it's horrible out there today. We have storms running over the last little bit. I hope it's good where you are, and I know that we've got entirely different hours now. It's about 4:30 p.m, coming up on 4:30 p.m. here in South Australia, and that would mean that the US is mostly asleep towards 1 a.m. and maybe 3 or 4 a.m. and Europe might be actually pretty pleased with this live stream time. Oh, Jacob's hanging out in very hot Phoenix where, yeah, it must be 1 a.m. So for the first time, the Europeans get it over the Americans. Nearly midnight in Cali. ASI timeline. So the ASI timeline, I have trouble envisaging this one. Again, I don't like to think 1 or 2 years ahead. So rather than a countdown to ASI, I instead have an ASI checklist. You can see this yourself at LifeArchitect.ai/ASI. All the orange ones you see are basically early signs of being partially achieved, or just some, let's call them leading indicators that this will be achieved by a general artificial superintelligence model. We have no items there that are achieved yet. These are items like the first new element invented by an artificial superintelligence system, a general artificial superintelligence system. First new element discovered and added to the periodic table. We've got really lofty goals like no crime and global AI governance. And then metrics like the first million fully autonomous humanoids in the home. So in answer to your question, on ASI timeline, thanks to Hanky for asking it, all it's going to take is an O5 or an O6 model, or a Grok-4 or a Grok-6 model, or a Claude 5 or a Claude 6 model. I think that's it. I mean, like I said, all you have to do is hit 50% on HLE and 50% on... sorry, let me say that again. 50% on HLE and 90% on GPQA for me to consider it as a Proto-ASI. Or perhaps even full ASI. It remains to be seen. It's very, very, very close. And I didn't expect it to be like this, but it might be that ASI and AGI happen closer together than previously thought. There are a lot of experts on record that say AGI first, 20 years later ASI, or similar ways of speaking that. The average human first, then complete superhuman with general intelligence, in 2045, which is a good 20 years from now. So I don't really have an answer to your question, except that it's close, and we're already seeing some of these early checklist items at least being played with. I'm talking about new physical inventions. We've got significant autonomous reviews with superhuman performance. I talk a lot about Microsoft Discovery, and we also had Microsoft MatterGen coming up with novel materials. They are pretty much general artificial superintelligences. They're using AI within an agentic platform. Sorry, they're using O3 or O1 within an agentic platform and coming up with completely new materials like TACR 206. That is definitely not the way you say it, and my chemical engineering friends are laughing. Or this PFAS-free immersion coolant that I was, and I still am, really impressed to see Microsoft delivered that just a few weeks ago, and said it was previously unknown to man. They couldn't bring it on stage, but they did end up giving us an example of the Proto-ASI, well, kind of pre-Proto-ASI, coming up with this in the platform, and then our materials engineers or our chemistry dudes actually creating that material. And that's this immersion coolant here. You've got a computer or a motherboard submerged in it, and it's running Forza in the background. Really fun. Could get 100 years of progress in a decade or a year. Absolutely. It'll be even quicker than that. ASI, and Kurzweil says something similar with his version of the singularity. When we get to a technological singularity, we could essentially have 1,000, 10,000 plus years happening in an instant when it comes up with completely new ways of doing things, optimizes those, and even does them tangibly, practically in real Earth time. And you and I get to live through it. Isn't that kind of cool? I feel like I might have missed something in my Grok-4 exploration. All I want to make sure you understand is that this is a significant model. It is a significantly expensive model. It is the state of the art right now. It's one of our big five, and kind of always has been. That's not the bubbles I want. Let me take you to LifeArchitect.ai/models table, where I have the real bubbles that I want. These are our big five labs and big five models at the moment. We will see Ilya's superintelligence or safe superintelligence model in years from now, and we'll also see Meta AI's new superintelligence lab as a new model probably in a year or two from now as well, depending on how quickly they can spin that up. They've spun the team up over the last few days, but I think it's still going to take a bit of time for them to make sure they've got the compute and to train it end to end. But these are the big five. I use a few of them day to day. I use OpenAI's and XAI's day to day. Richard's got a simple question for us. Can you explain the difference between the Grok-4 no tools and Grok-4 results on benchmarks? So I don't have a pretty picture of what's happening here, but let's consider the models we just looked at. These are frontier models. They've been pre-trained for, let's say, 4 months, maybe the equivalent of 20 or 30,000 years of GPU hours. They are then a standalone model. So if you go and chat with GPT-4o, for example, in ChatGPT, you're just talking with the model. Then we move into agents. And in our pretty picture here, oh, we don't even have to get to agents. All right, let's move straight to tools. Then we move to giving that model access to web. I think web search is a tool, certainly access to Wolfram Alpha. The XAI guys were talking about giving it access to very specific industry scientific platforms that had to do with all of the rocketry stuff they're doing there, all the space exploration stuff they're doing there. You could give access to engineering tools, you could give it access to specific databases, and because it's got access to those tools, then even if it's not agentic, it's still working outside of its kind of black box that we just saw with our bubbles. So it's no longer just a bubble. Oh, there's our bubbles. It's no longer just a bubble. It's a bubble that can go out and check the web. It can use basic tools like a calculator. It can go and play around in the real world without being called an agent, because our agents are just a little step on top of that, where they can make changes to things. So you would call OpenAI's operator an agent, so a computer use agent. You would call the awesome fellow AI browser an agentic browser, because it's clicking around in that UI, it's making changes to it. And so what we have here is a score for Grok-4 with no tools, a score for Grok-4 perhaps with tools on the AIME 25 here. So that probably means it had access to Wolfram Alpha and a graphic calculator, as we call it here in Australia. I know you guys call it something different there, but your old HP38, HP48, it might have used the equivalent of that in some sort of platform. And then it gets even better when you run 4 of those as agents that in this case are probably making changes or using, what's a good example here? Our tool use might include web, where our agent might be able to and maybe I haven't described it perfectly, but might be able to run entire Wolfram Alpha queries and then make adjustments to those and then bring those back into the model. All right, Might have messed up my explanation there, but hopefully you can see the difference between a bubble LLM black box and the ability to use tools. Awesome. Yeah, millions of AIs cooperating with each other is coming very soon. We don't see that with many other platforms. I think Grok-4 might be the first one, or Grok-4 Heavy might be the first one where that's entirely visible. O3 Pro, as I said before, I don't think was actually doing that. All right, I reckon we've had quite a long live stream, but I'm pretty happy that we've covered all of the big stuff. Massive state-of-the-art model, huge, massive compute with RL during training, and also massive compute if you're using Grok4 Heavy. It's running 4 instances at once across many H100s and returning a result. And they've got the cache, the compute, and the space, the land, to be able to do that. Oh, and the electricity as well. And there's some fascinating things that XAI are doing to be able to bring power generation into the US, which is having some troubles powering this kind of frontier AI. Had a blast. I do want to talk about one group, and I do want to talk about GPT-5 when it's here, but we're still waiting on GPT-5, and one group is just such a big discussion, but I gave you a glimpse of it today. You're invited to join the memo, LifeArchitect.ai/memo. The next one goes out very soon, actually. Maybe it's certainly in the next week, and there's some really interesting stuff in there that has been happening over the last couple of weeks, even though June was a bit of a lull. OpenAI shut their doors for a week. There's been no major model release since the beginning of June with the Gemini 2.5 Pro up until an hour or two ago when Grok-4 came out. Thanks for joining us. I'm glad you got to see the ridiculous $3,000 a year Grok-4 Heavy in play. And if you don't want to spend that, there's still O1 and O3 that are kind of cool. I think there's O1 as well, isn't there? Certainly O3 is something that all the OpenAI staff seem to be using day to day. They've pulled access to O1 in our standard interface. See you soon. Jump into the memo with me and have a blast wherever you are, particularly the Europeans. On with your day.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids. AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.